On the coast of Italy, far from Rome, an old soldier is dying on a small farm. He asks for one thing, that his bones never be taken to the city he saved. His tomb will read, "Ungrateful fatherland, you shall not have my bones." This man was not a traitor. He was the greatest general Rome ever produced, the only man alive who met Hannibal in open battle and won. His name was Publius Cornelius Scipio. Rome would call him Africanus, and then Rome would drive him out. This is the story of the man Rome could not forgive. He was born in 236 BC into the Cornelius Scipians, one of the oldest and proudest houses of the Republic. In a family like his, a boy was raised for one purpose, to serve Rome in the Senate and in war. In 218 BC, when Scipio was 17, the world broke open. A Carthaginian army under Hannibal Barca did the impossible. It crossed the Alps and came down into Italy with war elephants. At the river Ticinus, Rome's cavalry was shattered and the consul fell wounded in the chaos. His teenage son spurred his horse into the enemy line and dragged him out alive. That consul was Scipio's father. It was the boy's first battle. What followed was slaughter after slaughter. At the Trebia, an army froze and died. At Lake Trasimene, an ambush in the morning fog killed 15,000 Romans in 3 hours. Hannibal could not be stopped. Then came Cannae. On a single August afternoon in 216 BC, Hannibal surrounded and destroyed the largest army Rome had ever fielded. Perhaps 70,000 men died. 20-year-old Scipio was one of the few officers who fought his way out. In the wreckage, he learned what he was. Young nobles at Canusium were plotting to abandon Italy and save themselves. Scipio walked in with his sword drawn and made every man swear on his life never to desert Rome. They swore. Rome survived by refusing to fight. The dictator Fabius shadowed Hannibal and starved him of battles. But wars are not won by not losing, and the real war was being decided somewhere else, in Spain. Spain was Carthage's treasury, its silver mines and its recruiting ground, held now by Hannibal's brothers. Scipio's father and uncle commanded the Roman armies there. In 211 BC, in the space of a month, both were defeated and killed. Rome called an assembly to choose a new commander for Spain. No one came forward. The command was a death sentence. Then a 25-year-old walked up, the son and nephew of the dead generals. The people elected him on the spot. Scipio did something no Roman commander had done. He studied his enemy. Hannibal's battles, the traps, the feints, the double envelopment became his textbook. If Rome was going to beat Hannibal, it would be with Hannibal's own science. In 209 BC, he ignored the 3 Carthaginian armies hunting him and marched instead on the one place they all depended on, New Carthage, the enemy capital in Spain. Its walls were high, and its flank was guarded by a lagoon no army could cross. But Scipio had questioned fishermen. In the evening, wind and tide drained the lagoon to wading depth. He told his men the sea god Neptune had promised him aid, then sent 500 soldiers through the water. The impregnable city fell in a day. Then he did something stranger than the assault. He showed mercy. The Spanish hostages held in the city were freed. A captured bride was returned untouched to her fiancé, her ransom given as her dowry. Tribe after tribe began to leave Carthage for Rome. At Baecula in 208, he pinned the enemy center with light troops while his best men swept around both flanks. It was Hannibal's own medicine, administered by a Roman. The Carthaginians broke. At Ilipa in 206, he was outnumbered. For days, he paraded the same formation. Then at dawn, he reversed it, put his strongest legions on the wings, and attacked before the enemy had eaten. The last Carthaginian army in Spain ceased to exist. He came home at 30, undefeated, and Rome made him consul. But in the Senate, the old men did not see a savior. They saw a young man the soldiers worshipped and the people adored, and that, in Rome, was a dangerous thing to be. Scipio's plan was heresy. Stop chasing Hannibal around Italy, sail to Africa, and put Carthage itself under the sword, forcing Hannibal to come home and fight on ground of Rome's choosing. Old Fabius called it reckless vanity. The Senate gave him Sicily and no army. If he wanted Africa, he could take volunteers. 7,000 men chose to follow him, and Sicily held something else. The survivors of Cannae, legions banished there in disgrace, forbidden to come home. Scipio took the shamed men everyone else had thrown away and drilled them into the finest army Rome had. They had one thing no other legion possessed: 15 years of debt and a burning need to pay it back. In 204 BC, 400 ships crossed to Africa. For the first time in this long war, Carthaginians watched smoke rise over their own fields. There Scipio found the ally who would decide everything: Masinissa, an exiled Numidian prince fighting to win back his stolen kingdom. His horsemen were the finest cavalry on earth, and until now, cavalry had always been Hannibal's weapon. Through the winter, Scipio besieged Utica and talked peace with the enemy camps, while his envoys, trained soldiers in servants' clothes, memorized every gate, every street of reeds and timber where two armies slept. Then on a moonless night he burned them. Both camps fired at once, the exits already held. Polybius wrote that of all the disasters of the war, none was more terrible. Tens of thousands died without a battle line ever forming. Scipio could be merciful. He could also be pitiless. Weeks later, he crushed the rebuilt army at the Great Plains. Syphax, Carthage's Numidian king, was taken in chains, and Masinissa rode home to a crown. Carthage had one card left to play. The order crossed the sea to Italy: come home. After 16 years undefeated on Roman soil, Hannibal Barca boarded a ship and watched the coast of Italy sink below the horizon. He is said to have wept. In the autumn of 202 BC, the two armies found each other near a town called Zama, 5 days' march from Carthage. Everything, the whole 17-year war, 500,000 dead, had narrowed to this. Before the battle, Hannibal asked to speak with Scipio alone. The two greatest soldiers alive met on the empty ground between the armies. Hannibal, twice his age, offered peace. Scipio answered, "You should have thought of peace before you left Italy. Prepare for battle." At dawn, Hannibal sent his opening blow. 80 war elephants, the largest force of them he had ever fielded, thundering at the Roman line. But Scipio had rebuilt his entire formation for this moment. His maniples stood in hidden columns, with lanes of empty ground between them. Trumpets shrieked, the lanes opened, and the elephants poured through the army without touching it. On the wings, Masinissa's Numidians and the Roman horse shattered Hannibal's cavalry and chased it off the field. The plain fell quiet. Now it was infantry against infantry, and Hannibal still had his veterans of Italy, the men who had made Cannae. The lines ground into each other, Scipio's Cannae survivors against the army that had disgraced them. The fighting was even then desperate. For a moment, the whole war balanced on a blade. Then thunder. Masinissa's cavalry, returning from the pursuit, smashed into the back of Hannibal's veterans. Encirclement. Annihilation. It was Cannae itself, inflicted on its own inventor. 20,000 of Hannibal's men died at Zama. Hannibal himself escaped with a handful of riders beaten, for the first and only time in his life. The Second Punic War was over. And then Scipio did the most un-Roman thing of all. He spared Carthage. No sack, no slaughter, a treaty, indemnities, and its walls left standing. He had not come to erase a civilization. He had come to end a war. Rome gave him the greatest triumph in its history, and a name no Roman had ever carried: Africanus, the conqueror of Africa. He was not yet 35 years old. And that was the moment Rome began to destroy him. The Republic had a terror older than Hannibal, a citizen greater than the state. Cato the Elder made it his life's work to bring Africanus down. The weapon was the courtroom. In 187 BC, the Scipios were accused of taking bribes and stealing war money from the campaign against Antiochus. First, his brother was prosecuted. Then they came for Africanus himself. He rose with the account books in his hands and tore them to pieces before the court. Then he said, "On this day, years ago, I defeated Hannibal in Carthage. Come with me to the capital and give thanks to the gods." And the entire assembly walked out with him, leaving his accusers standing alone. It was his last victory, and he understood exactly what it meant. They would never stop. Rather than watch Rome shred what remained of his name, he withdrew to a small farm at Liternum and never entered the city again. He died there in 183 BC, around 53. That same year, far to the east, Roman agents finally cornered old Hannibal, and he drank poison rather than be paraded in chains. The two greatest enemies of the age left the world together. Rome raised statues to him later when he was safely dead, but his grave was never moved. It stayed at Liternum, exactly where he ordered, bearing the sentence he chose: "Ungrateful fatherland, you shall not have my bones." So what did Scipio leave us? Two lessons that outlived the Rome that threw him away. The first is how you win. He was beaten at Cannae, and instead of fearing the man who did it, he studied him. Hannibal's tactics became his textbook, and at Zama, he beat Hannibal with Hannibal's own move. Every commander from Caesar to Napoleon learned it after him. Study the one who beats you. Turn your worst defeat into the thing you master. The second lesson is harder. Scipio served Rome better than any man alive, and Rome tried to destroy him for it. But he had not done it for their thanks. He did it for the goal, his people safe, the war ended, and that he had already won. They drove him from the city. They could not take the victory he actually came for. When Rome wronged lesser men, Sulla, then Caesar, they marched on it and seized power. Scipio, loved more than either, simply walked away to a farm. He never wanted their power, only the work. They wanted his bones and never got them. He wanted the victory and never lost it. That is not legend. It is proven by history.